Hey, Richard, thanks so much for having me.
Very good. We're here. So good to have you back. Market activity, that's where we're going to start. We're going to get like kind of a market snapshot. You know, the numbers that people see, it depends how you read the news. We talk about median prices. We talk about it. You hear one person report it this way, but we know you've got the real right numbers. Let me just jump in. Market activity and demand. Where are we at right here in the Las Vegas market?
So Las Vegas is actually doing okay. In fact, March of 2026, we saw 5,369 homes closed in the Valley, and that is the first month in 2 years that we've seen a year-over-year increase. So March 2025 was 5,196. So this is the first time in 2 years that we've seen more activity in the same month than the year previous. So that gives me some hope that the thaw that we've experienced for the last 3 years is starting to the freeze is starting to thaw a little bit.
You know, every week it feels like the news is a little different. You see one website saying things are going down. You saw that Zillow has redefined their numbers, saying it's going to be a mixed market. Depends where you are at. I've talked to Brian. Brian's taking applications and stuff. Rates are still higher. What are you seeing? Are you seeing more buyers, more sellers? Is it balanced? What do you think?
Definitely right now, more sellers in the market. We've seen an increase of inventory year over year. We did see buyer activity, though, at the beginning of the year. I think 2026 started out rather abruptly. And then some geopolitical events occurred that caused rates to jump. And, when rates jump up the way they did, and then also you have some pressure coming with gas prices, buyers tend to pull back if affordability was an issue that was keeping them on the sidelines last year, and they were finally feeling ready to jump back in. That may have kind of given us a little bit of a head fake. So I think NAR also reduced their expectations, transactional volume for the year. They were more on the bull end. I think they were pretty high, like 14% increase. I think they've kind of come back down to where a lot of the other expectations were, but I think everybody is kind of taking a look back now, seeing how this is going to play out, how it's going to affect the rest of the market for the remainder of the year.
We're talking with Ticor Title's Ryan Pulliam. Tell us your job title there. It's assistant.
So I'm the sales manager and also the assistant county manager. So I help run the sales team and then also assist our county manager, Charlie LaLiberte, in running the operation. Real
good. We just put a deal into escrow with you guys recently. We got a few in there with you now. I was actually just texting Jeremy Wallace on the way. Marcia's going to give me a property report in the morning. I do love that you guys are so good about the information. When I need something, I can call you. You guys help me out and make me look good. Brian, when he was saying at the beginning of the year, we had a lot of optimism pre-war, right?
Yeah.
Things were good. We had a great kickoff of the year. I was the most optimistic as I was since the previous January. It's been a slow year. We saw that.
But we're lucky. You and I are still, we're still busy. Now, how's your refis looking over there at Ticor? Are you getting a lot of refis?
Refis ticked up a little bit, and then they've stalled. Rates have come down a smidge from their peak after the bombing of Iran, but we're not seeing a big influx of it like we were. I think mortgage apps reported today. I think refi apps dropped about 4.4% from the prior week.
You were getting some refi apps. How are you?
Yeah,
for refis?
mine are mostly HELOCs right now and seconds. Not really touching the first too much.
Right.
So we'll go to the other one. We talked about affordability. You already touched on it. I was in L.A. yesterday. We drove all the way there. We drove on the way back. I wanted to get to Victorville. We ended up paying for gas in L.A., and I think it was at about $6 plus a gallon over there. Affordability is something that's going to be a big factor in the coming elections. We know that people are stretched on what they can do. So I think that affordability is as bad as it has been in a long time. So you see it as rising still, correct? Like lack thereof affordability, I should say, correct?
Yeah, there's definitely still a challenge. It's improved from where we were last year. We're still lower mortgage rate wise where we were last year, and prices have softened. We haven't seen a big increase in sales prices, so it's looking as good as it's been for the few years. But yeah, you throw in an extra $50-$60 a week on gasoline, that cuts into people's ability to pay their mortgages, and say, hey, let's wait a little bit and see what happens. So I think we're in a little bit of a wait and see approach. There seemed to be a lot of, when you look at when the event happened, pending home sales were still up in March. But I think a lot of the news was this was going to be a very short event. And you see oil futures were thinking it was going to be a short event. Maybe now it's going to be a little longer than folks had initially anticipated. And that ripple effect of, okay, gas prices now, is our food prices going to come up. I know the Fed today was still concerned about inflation. So it's just it's the same story over again. And unfortunately just happened at a horrible time, because we really did have some positive momentum going in the market.
We had some momentum. Brian, you and I were talking with people that were going slow. They kind of got approved, whether it was for the buy before you sell. Then they found some houses, and then you added the new pricing in, and people get this shock, right? They're already at the stretch of it. Then you move up, 5, 10, 15, 20 basis points.
It's not as bad as people think it is, but it's mental. When they see the rate go up a little bit, it's just they don't want to pay it. But like we encountered today, we had someone willing to pay, they want to pay a discount point. Discount point is 1% of your loan. Well, they had to pay $3,000 to save $20.
Right.
It's going to take a long time to make that up.
Well, you do a net tangible benefit for somebody, and you actually show them, right, often that break-in point might be over 40 months. You got somebody that's a short-term house, don't throw your money that way. Take it off of the price. Use it towards your other closing cost in that. What do you think about points?
Yeah,
unless somebody's really going to stay a long time.
It's rare that someone sees out the loan more than 10 years, so it's not really usually beneficial.
I think we're the third metro area, the shortest. Average people are around 10.8 years. We average about 7.4 years between mortgages. This kind of goes to that points. So, what are you thinking about buyers and sellers? Title from the title perspective. What are you thinking? You said you've got some refis going. Do you still see it as a positive here in Las Vegas? And this doesn't have to just be to residential. You can talk about commercial and other things as well, if you like.
Yeah, there's still a lot of positives for Las Vegas, big picture wise. I mean, with the news of the possible NBA team coming.
It's not possible. It's coming. It is coming.
Right, it's coming. So there's still a lot of. I'm still a big buyer on Las Vegas. I'm still really high on Las Vegas, and I do think as affordability becomes more of a concern, those people in California that may have stayed there after the initial wave of price increases, they're going to start looking to get out of California, and Las Vegas has always been a great spot for those people to come over. And kind of going back to what you guys were talking about with the perception versus reality, it really does come down to how good your lender is and how good your realtor is, because there are ways to get deals done and make it affordable. It's just making sure you're working with a team that has the best options out there and know how to navigate a challenging market. And it's not necessarily as challenging as it has been the last few years, but there are still some ways to get deals done, and it's all about pulling your team together and making sure you have the best folks navigating through the process.
So Jeremy Wallace, he wanted me to bring up something. Well, we switch gears a little bit. We kind of know where the market is about the fraud. I sent him a story, and he goes, that's one of the things we were going to comment on his Instagram page. AI is making fraud even more easily to be done, right? It's so easy to dupe somebody. You ever watch a video, and you're like, is that AI or not? You can't even tell anymore, and it's only getting better and better. Let's talk about how that happens. Real estate transactions and agents and lenders get targeted all the time trying to intercept with a phishing ad to steal earnest money or proceeds to close and stuff. Tell us about how a buyer, particularly the buyer, right, who's putting up the money, ways to protect themselves between that chain, between that earnest money. What are some things that you're either seeing or ways to protect yourself?
So the biggest thing is that you never accept wiring instructions via email. We have a secure online portal called Starting Here that we communicate with the buyer on. And, Richard, as you said, it's become more prevalent lately, because before you could tell when an email was written poorly. The English was a little tough. The punctuation was off. Certain words that we just don't use over in the United States. But now with large language models, they can make these things look absolutely amazing and talk like they know exactly what's going on. So what they can do is definitely just inquire before you wire, call, verify the wiring instructions to a known trusted number at the title company. And just, I think we talked about it last time, Ronald Reagan's famous quote, trust but verify.
Trust but verify.
I wouldn't trust anything right now, but you got to verify before you send a wire to a title company, because unfortunately we see it continually. We speak ad nauseum about wire fraud and what to look out for, but sometimes people are just in the motions or they're getting pressured to do so, and they end up sending a wire to a billing, and the money's gone.
Is a cashier's check better to do then?
A cashier's, as long as the contract okays. I mean, most of the contracts come over that the buyer will be wiring money, and as escrow, we have to adhere to what we're instructed. So if the contract reads wire, then we obviously have to accept a wire. So if it's written up that a personal check or a cashier's check, just depending on how long the escrow is, you can definitely pull a cashier's check. Cashier's checks aren't considered a good fund, so you can't close on them. Meaning you can't come in with
to close. You need to
close on it.
Yes.
Yeah, you have to have. Yeah, it has to be deposited into our account. But earnest money on a typical 30 to 45 day escrow, we can wait to those. We can wait to those clear the bank. But again, it just has to be okayed by both buyer and seller.
We're talking with Ryan Pulliam with Ticor Title. It is who we use and trust and appreciate you guys doing. What can we talk about in the next few months? Realtors Association, Brian, it's always a great time to buy. It's always a great time to sell. I try to be more realistic. It really depends on your situation. Maybe renting is actually better for you in your situation. There's a lot of cost. What do you think for people moving forward? Is it specific? We got the seller side. Sellers are still fetching a very nice price for their homes. What do you think? Somebody's thinking about buying or selling. What should they be doing? Is this the time to be moving forward on a sale?
Was that to me or to Brian?
That was to you. I know what Brian's going to say.
Okay. Well, of course. Yeah, I do think that obviously the American dream is something that we all strive for. I think owning a home is one of the things we should all, work towards. But like you said, Richard, it depends on the situation. Now, what we have seen is when rates do drop a little bit, there's more activity and you're going to have more competition. So it's not necessarily, people are always trying to time the market, but you can't time the market. It's not time in the market, it's time in the market. And once you make a purchase, you start putting towards your equity, you start paying down your debt. And if there is appreciation, even if it's mild appreciation over the next few years, you're still going to be better off than you are renting a home. Now, again, like you said, if you don't have the means to purchase a home, renting is still great, but if you can do it, I don't want like headlines, the fear to lead, and people not take advantage of something and the joy of home ownership.
Well, we're truly a buyer's market right now by the definition that we use for that. There's more buyers. There's fewer buyers in the market than there are sellers. This is the opportunity, Brian, right?
Yep.
To be able to go in. Homes are still appraising for high dollar amounts, meaning there's equity in there. This is the chance. Maybe you do need help with your down payment or points you can get in there.
Well, you get the seller to pay your closing costs.
Get your seller to ask. Get an agent that's going to go in there and say it in a nice way and say, hey, we need some help on some costs, affordability there. Make some offers. Sellers are sitting longer and longer days on market. We appreciate you joining us again.
Hey, it's my pleasure. Thank you guys so much for your support, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Appreciate it. We're talking to Ryan Pulliam with Ticor Title, our partner in our show. We appreciate them. When we come back, we're going to be talking with John Park Law. We're going to be out you for 2 segments. Appreciate you being here. Tell us about your firm and your practice areas.
Thank you, Richard, for having me here. This is John Park. We do real estate, probate, estate planning, asset protection, some personal injury now as well. But we're here to help Nevadans, making sure that they're protecting their assets.
And elder law, correct?
And elder law as well, that's correct.
We're going to ask you a question. We have a listener of the show that actually asked me today, and I said, you know what? I've got somebody not only knows real estate, knows about elder law. We'll define that. Brian, we got some questions. Got a lot of questions we know that are particular to the listeners that we have.
No, and I met John years ago, and I've had an opportunity to use them and never had any complaints. So that's why
that's high praise coming from Brian. No complaints. There we go.
No complaints. And no lawsuits. But before we got on the air, we were talking. We said, one common thing that Richard and I see is people putting their kids on title and thinking that's all they got to do, or they just got to have a will.
Yeah.
And they just set it and forget it.
Yeah.
And it becomes a problem later. So just want to get your input on that.
Yeah, I think we call that poor man's estate planning, which is okay to a certain point, because if you're just trying to avoid probate court, which you go in front of a judge, it's tens of thousands of dollars, a whole bunch of time to go through that procedure, then placing a child onto your title of property is fine. But the pitfalls of that people don't realize is you're actually giving away a part of your equity to your child now. And if your child has issues or problems, now those issues and problems can take your house now at that point.
So they're a liability.
Yeah, there's liabilities associated with that, yes. I don't recommend it, but if that's the only thing you can do to avoid a probate scenario, then I guess it's better than that.
So what do you recommend?
Trusts are the way to go. A lot of times people think just about wills. They all know what wills are. Wills are simple documents that say, look, when I die, this is where my assets should go. Problem with wills are they're cheap on the front end, but they go to probate court on the back end. So again, tens of thousands of dollars, a whole bunch of time.
So a living trust is for basically like a will for when you're alive, right? It's a directive of what you want to do, so your wishes can be there. Maybe you have a diminished capacity, you're in a hospital, there's something like that. This helps you with this side. And what happens when they pass, everything really stays the same. You are able to avoid probate largely, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, the trust is set up as a way, it's like a contract, it's an artificial person where you manage everything as the trustee, and it's for your benefit still. So nothing's really changing except for the title of how things are titled to your assets. So
Brian and I have done some luncheons. We have our aging in place. We just did one at Ticor. I sponsor at Sun City. I had one. We actually had a trust attorney, and we're not talking with as much anymore. He's doing it. This is one of the reasons why I said, Brian said, let's find an attorney that's really specific to this. What we have found is people talk about probate. The differences in probate, how to avoid it. This goes hand in hand with the living will, how to avoid probate.
Yeah, the biggest thing that goes to probate, the biggest asset is the real property. And so with real property, we have different levels of probate in the state of Nevada. It just recently changed these levels. But if you're trying to do $500,000 or above in assets that are going to probate court, is going to what is called a general probate proceeding. A whole bunch of time, very expensive. Then below that, there's a summary probate proceeding, and that summary probate proceeding, you're going to be looking at around $300,000. So if you're lower than that, now we have what is called a set aside. That's $150,000 of value of assets going to probate, and that's like a go to court one time. It's pretty straightforward. There's nothing crazy about that. And then if you don't want to go to court, and let's just say you had a trust and you forgot to put an asset or there in there, we have a small estate affidavit. To married couples or surviving spouses, that limit is up to $100,000, and to anybody else, it's $25,000. That's an affidavit you fill out. You don't have to go to probate court. But the bottom line is probate court is very expensive. It's usually a percentage of the estate of the value of the assets. So I tell our clients all the time, you either pay me a little bit now for a trust or pay me a whole bunch later through probate. And why would you pay us when all your hard-earned money should just go to your children or whoever your beneficiaries should be?
Some people think you have to be super rich to have the benefits of a trust, but a trust is your directive. There's so many things that you can pick your will for. Talk about it. For an average working folk that says, you know what, maybe it costs me a little bit more, talk about it, how a normal folk could actually benefit from this and for their family and for their heirs in the future, especially related to health issues and such.
Yeah, Richard, I look at real property again, what goes to probate the most. Ryan talked about the American dream, owning a home,
Yep.
And you're paying your monthly payments on that all the time, building all this equity, and now all of a sudden you're going to go to probate court because you didn't place into a trust. So that's a scenario when I see that there's real property, place it into a trust. When I see individuals that have life insurance for minor children, place that into a trust.
Okay.
These are things that, so again, I don't think I have to be really rich to get a trust. The living trust is there to make sure you're protecting your biggest asset, which is most likely going to be your home.
Well, this is complicated stuff. You see those $99 wills, and those are better than nothing. However, those don't avoid, a will in itself does not avoid either full probate or simplified, correct?
That's correct. A will doesn't avoid probate, but those wills are better than nothing. If you don't have a will, the state of Nevada has a will for you that tells you where your assets are going to go. And what I know that we don't want to be told where we should send our assets to. So by getting a will, at least you can have your wishes in writing. And if you're going to probate at that point, at least it's still better than the Nevada default will that we have.
Now, is there a maintenance for a trust?
There's not a lot of maintenance really for a revocable living trust. It's pretty much you set it, you forget it. Every once in a while, somebody might come back and say, I need to amend that trust. And if you amend that trust, you're really amending it for a couple of reasons. You had a falling out with a child or something, right? Or you're trying to change your personal representatives. If you're doing something like that, or your trustees, if you're doing something like that, then yeah, you're going to pay to amend your trust. But if you're saying, look, I don't need to change everything, it's all perfect, it's all fine, I've got all these backup agents in there, I've got everything in place of how my distribution plan is going to work, then at that point, there's no administrative cost while you have your trust in place.
Okay, so nothing yearly or no registration fees, right?
Correct.
I have to pay some. I've got an LLC, and I've got a couple LLCs, and I pay somebody, a maintenance, it's an attorney, is my representative to do it, but that's what he was talking about. We're talking about with John Park Law. You've got an office. I've seen your sign. Now that I know it, I've seen it because I live in Summerlin South, so I'm always taking the Bend. You're down by the Bend, right by the Durango area. You have a practice there.
Yes, that's where our practice is at. It's a very easy location, right across from the IKEA. Now, Ashley Furniture, the Durango.
And the Bend,
right there. The Bend, the Bend's really cool. Huh?
We go to Durango. It's super new, and now that you got the big, nice expansion, it's a nice area to be in the Bend. That'll be a nice place. I'm sure you'll be doing some lunches nearby as that place continues to build out. You're also licensed in California as well.
Yeah, licensed in California, licensed in Utah. We have offices in all 3 states. And one of the big things I see and people come and talk to me about is if I have because we have a lot of Californians moving to the state of Nevada now, right? We have no income tax here and whatnot, and a lot of people say, look, I've got a trust in California. Should I change the law or do I need to update anything to Nevada? Well, your California trust is still valid in Nevada, but the way the law works, it's 100% better to change the law from California to Nevada.
Yep.
And the reason why is because Nevada's trust administration law is the best in the nation. Like, everyone comes to the state of Nevada for irrevocable asset protection trust, whatever it may be, right? But we can administer our trust in about 4 months or so. In California, just to cut off creditors, it takes a whole year. So that's just attorney's fees and costs that are racking up.
Brian and I had a friend of our show, IinsureForYou.com, on our last show. She's been on several times, and Brian texted me and said, I forgot that I didn't do this. He's a landlord. We're talking about actually placing the vehicle, right? This is a real estate show. Let's talk about that. They have a trust. Everything is proper, but then they don't actually place the actual home into the trust. It gets left off, and they'll keep collecting your money, and they'll never tell you. But say you got a major fire, you got major damage, and all of a sudden, if by definition the trust, you're not truly, quote, the real owner of it, right? You're a trustee. Talk about the importance of maybe doing that with the insurance and updating that with you and making that happen.
Yeah, 2 things about the trust is we tell our clients all the time, we draft the trust for you. Once the trusts are drafted, you're about 50% finished at that point. There is a step 2, and that step 2 is making sure your assets are actually funded or titled or beneficiary designated or pointed to your trust. Most of the times, clients don't do that. They're thinking, I signed all the documents, I signed my will, I signed my trust, my power of attorneys and whatnot, and then they're like, I'm done. I never have to do anything again.
Yeah,
and then later,
we forgot all about it.
Yeah, then later kids are coming up and say, my parents have a trust, and we say, how are all the assets titled? And say, it's in their individual names. And now we're like, that's unfortunate. You're going to be going to probate court on that. And there's some, simplified procedures when you have a will that pours over to your trust, but the important thing is making sure your assets are pointed and or retitled or beneficiary designated to your trust. And again, the big thing about real property, once you've transferred the asset to the trust, make sure you reach out to your insurance agent and make sure that the trust is now listed either as the owner of the property so that your insurance is all updated. A lot of people forget that.
We're gonna run on a break. We have so many questions we can ask you, but we are going to talk about elder law and exploitation of that. I actually have a listener of the show who wants to ask this exact question. When we come back, we're with John Park Law. This is the Richard Husel Real Estate Hour. We are back on the Richard Husel Real Estate Hour. Got my co-host Brian Ichikawa with the RatePro.com. We've got John Park Law in studio. Brian introduced me. I said, we need to find an attorney. We've had other attorneys on before. Something that's related to trust, real estate, really the practice areas that you and I, right? We do commercial real estate. You're doing loans. We're multi-state. And you've been a great guest. We appreciate you being on. I want to ask you about exploitation of elders. Brian and I do aged in place seminars. We reach out to people in Sun City. What do we mean? Describe what elder law is. It's really to protect people that might have cognitive decline, people that can be duped a little easy. Maybe they weren't raised with don't understand the AI and these different things. Not saying that they're not
with it.
Yeah, they're not with it. It's just, it may be a little easier to dupe. We have a listener on the show right now that has a situation that sounds very unfortunate. Talk about that and what you can actually do to help protect somebody who may have been taken advantage by somebody. Even loved ones hate to say it. They actually do it, right? They see mom's got some equity in a house. They play with some paperwork, think she's going to pass away in the near future, and everything will be okay. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, elder law, I think it looks at, as we look at an aging population, I think you go to an attorney, and are they able to talk and explain concepts in a way that your client's going to understand that? I think that's one of the really important things here. There's guardianship, there's power of attorneys that's going to be in place, there's cognitive decline and all that, but in its simplest form, I look at it as, are you the attorney able to understand and explain all these concepts? Because they're not easy concepts even for attorneys, on a level that your client can understand, really, right? Because it's the client's own assets, it's the client's own situation, and a lot of times I hear, "Hey, I went to this attorney, I have no clue what they said. I don't even understand."
They're using the nomenclature, they're talking
Yes.
above versus bringing it down to a level that you can actually understand.
Yes. But I look at it was interesting. Just last week, I had a client just reach out to me saying, "Hey, John, I read this article about title insurance locking it up because you're seeing people go and exploit elders and seniors with their title to strip their equity away." They're saying, "Do we think I need this title insurance to lock that away? How prevalent do you think that is?"
You mean that title lock?
Yeah, that title lock. Yeah, because a lot of times it says it really just depends. You'd have to have a couple of bad actors. You'd have to have a bad notary that didn't see the person that's signing. You'd have to have somebody that puts that documentation together. You'd have to then have somebody go and record that. And you're not going to know because you think, "I own this property." Are you ever really going to go look at your title? Probably not. Right. But most of the times this client had their real property in trust, and it's a little more difficult to do that through a trust. One thing I see a lot of the times is I see people, clients, they're selling their real properties, and after they sold it, they have a bunch of cash remaining, right? And what are they doing with that cash? We have children come into our office all the time saying, "Look, my parents, they're great and everything. They're getting older in age, but they're getting exploited. People are calling them, telling them that there's an emergency, and they're saying, 'Send money to me right away,' right?" And one way to really protect something like that is placing it to a trust. Place your properties in a trust, and as you do something like that, your trustee can help protect your asset for yourself during your lifetime.
They can protect the money.
Yeah, they protect the money, correct.
Okay.
You can still have control and management over it and whatnot, but protecting that money is really important because we get that fact pattern so much every single day, right? Or you have some cognitive decline, somebody's calling you, and as they're calling you, they're saying, "Send me this money," and they're pulling on your heartstrings. That's what they do, right? And that's what's happening. And so just making sure that your property, your assets, and everything is protected. It's locked up, and who more to do that than your own beneficiaries, your own children.
So a certain dollar amount is what triggers it.
I don't think there's a certain dollar amount or anything. It's just children are concerned that their parents are sending thousands of dollars out every single month to random people that are calling them.
So you can put a protection to make it so they can't get access. If it's more than $1,000, that's to go through someone else?
Yeah, I mean, again, through trust. Trust is the way to go. Having somebody else manage those assets for that individual is really the way to go.
What's the example you have, Richard?
I also think of breaking up the amounts. One of the things, I'm a senior relocation specialist. We've gone through this training. We've talked about putting smaller amounts where you've got maybe that healthcare assistant that's in the house or things. They may need to go to shop with you. Do not give them all the access to a card. You got $100,000 in your account. Maybe put a small amount of money in there. They have access that limits that and makes it. Let me ask you, what we've found when Brian and I have done our programs, our luncheons for seniors, we find all ladies there. The only times there's a man there is when she's with a wife. It's almost dominated by it. Ladies tend to live longer. Talk about joint tenancy. Does something need to change? Spouse passes away. Let's call it the husband because that's more often than not Talk about that. Do they need to change their vesting relative to now heirs and things there? Is that something?
Yeah, if you don't have a trust and you have a property, you and your spouse were on that property in a joint tenancy, upon the death of the first spouse, it will automatically go to the survivor. But you still have to file a specific document. That is called an affidavit of death of joint tenant.
Okay.
That document, once it's filed, now that clears the title away with the death certificate of the spouse that passes first, and now the property becomes the surviving spouse's property. So in joint tenancy, that's a good way to go. But now again, you've got to be concerned about,